ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्र्यवतु गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ यश्छन्दसां वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया शृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम् शरीरं मे विचर्षणम् जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवम् ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः मेधा देवी जुषमाणा न आगाद् विश्वाची भद्रा सुमनस्य माना त्वया जुष्टानुगमाना दुरुक्तान् बृहद्वदेम विदथे सुवीराः त्वया जुष्टऋषिर्भवति देवी त्वया ब्रह्मा गतश्रीरुतत्वया त्वया जुष्टश्चित्रं विन्दते वसुसानो जुषस्वत्र विनो न मेधे मेधां महीन्द्रो ददातु मेधां देवी सरस्वती मेधां मे अश्विना वुभावा धत्तां पुष्करस्रजा अप्सरासु च या मेधा गन्धर्वेषु च यन्मनः दैवीं मेधा सरस्वती सा मां मेधा सुरभिर्जुषत स्वाहा आमां मेधा सुरभिर्विश्वरूपा हिरण्यवर्णा जगति जगम्या ऊर्जस्वती पयसा बिन्वमाना सा मां मेधा सुप्रतीका जुषन्ताम् मयि मेधां मयि प्रजां मयि अग्निस्तेजो दधातु मयि मेधां मयि प्रजां मयीन्द्र इन्द्रियं दधातु मयि मेधां मयि प्रजां मयि सूर्यो भ्राजो दधातु हंस हंसाय विद्महे परमहंसाय धीमहि तन्नो हंसः प्रचोदयात् ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात् स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्ताम् न्यायेन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यम् समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
ॐ गणपतये नमः। वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नोदया ॐ शान्तिः। Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer our loving pranam to the feet of our Sai Baba. I'm indeed privileged to warm welcome to all the enthusiastic seekers of Vedic knowledge, to all the dedicated resource persons, the sisters and brothers, and to all the ardent devotees of God. I welcome you all to the 7th episode of the Gama Agama lecture series. Today we have with us Revered Dr. G Pitre, a pious and a blessed soul, as our next speaker to address us on the topic the Vedas, the foundation of Indian culture and spirituality, part 7. Words about Pitreji prior to handing over to Pitre. Revered Dr. Pitreji was born in 1980. He holds a master's degree in physics with first class in B.Ed exam with distinction marks and deep research on science development in University of London. He began his career by choice as a school teacher and served in high-profile schools. He is indeed eminent educationist, one of the renowned public servants of his students. He was the founder principal of 2 other well-known schools in India. He has extensively traveled in India and abroad, visiting famous schools and centers of education, and served as a faculty on scores of teacher preparation courses. He was attracted to Bhagawan Sri Sathya Baba in 1976 and has conducted hundreds of courses and workshops on value education for various sectors of community, and is currently the honorary director of the Institute of Sathya Education located in Dharmakshetra, Mumbai. Prior to Pitreji's live talk, we will have a 2-minute 40-second video clipping of his lecture delivered in World Educational Congress. It will be followed by the live lecture by Pitreji. So over to Pitreji. Prior to that, we will have a prelude. Sai Ram.
श्रुतं मे गोपाय।
My Lord and Master, Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, Revered Elders, brothers and sisters, my loving greetings to all of you here. The foundation of education for quality, for growth, for sustenance, for inclusiveness depends upon the base of the educational structure pyramid, which is school education. I am going to talk about school education for a few minutes here. If the foundation is strong, the structure not only grows and goes higher, but also you can make modifications, changes, improvements, grow it as you like. But the foundation is very important. As far as the child is concerned, the foundation is laid first at home and next in the school before the child goes to the tertiary education system, where there are all kinds of multiple things. Therefore, if the foundation is strong, any future shocks can be absorbed. Modern science has now given us a lot of feedback which has been authenticating some of the traditional beliefs and systems and practices we have been doing for centuries together. Right now, the 21st century, we have had so many researches which have been conducted, and science has come to accept the cosmic consciousness. Science has also come to accept now in the scientific papers the interdependence of body, mind and the spirit. Science has also shown that the practices which were employed traditionally in all cultures and religions have now a positive basis.
Now you speak.
Sai Ram. Om Sana Vavatu Sano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'm expressing my gratefulness and thanks to all the participants who are online and also those who are sitting in front of me here. Way back in 1982, on 9th of April, Swami visited Rishikesh. And Swami laid the foundation of the Sri Sathya Sai Center on the bank of Ganga near Lakshman Jhula. I am one of those fortunate persons who was present there at that time and is still alive now, one of the few people. The Sri Sathya Sai Trust of Uttar Pradesh then prayed to Swami and requested that Swami gives the permission, the willingness to start a Ved Pathshala here on this campus, which is now called the North Prashanti. Swami was very happy at the environment. Swami said, Ganga below,
the mountains around. What a beautiful place. And while Swami willingly agreed to start the Ved Pathshala, Swami said, name it Shri Sathya Sai Ved Shastra Pathshala. Swami repeated and said, yes, Shri Sathya Sai Ved Shastra Pathshala. Now, what was the significance of using the word Shastra when almost all the other Ved Pathshalas are just called Ved Pathshala? Swami further elaborated and said, Shastra is the knowledge of the Vedas. Knowledge which can be given by many eminent persons in this country who are available to us. But in this Ved Shastra Pathshala, to begin with, the children will only be doing the recitation part of it. The Shastra will come later on. What Swami was trying to indicate then was that the beginning of the children should be with the recitation part, and then later on when they grow up, the Shastra should be known to them. In fact, for almost 37 years after that, nothing happened in the North Prashanti campus until in 2019. Suddenly we came about with the recording of what transpired then with the trustees there. And Swami had given detailed instructions of starting the Ved Shastra Pathshala. And therefore, it was thought that we should do something to promote this idea. Work began in May 2019, and in 6 months, everything was complete, and the Ved Shastra Pathshala was inaugurated on the 11th of November 2019. With over 900 devotees of Swami in the campus, reciting the Vedas on the bank of the Ganga. If it were for 1982, there was hardly any awareness of the importance of Vedas as far as the Sathya Sai devotees are concerned. It was in 2003 that first time the recitation of the Vedas was introduced in Prashanti campus. And then the movement grew. And as you all know now, everywhere, in all activities and all functions, all over the world, wherever the Sathya Sai organization functions, everybody involves themselves in the chanting of the Vedas. In other words, before the Ved Shastra Pathshala was inaugurated from 1982 onwards, Swami ensured that there was an ecosystem which was favorable to starting the Ved Pathshala. The second point I want to mention here is that Swami was very clear what should be taught at the lower level and what should be taught at the higher level. 10 years after 1982, that is 1992, on the 13th of January, Swami called a meeting in the Prashanti Mandir. Some of us were there, and Swami talked about the education in human values program for schools. I want to mention here that when we talk of the foundation of the Indian culture, that is the Vedas, Swami also talked about the foundation of the educational structure, where the schools, as I mentioned earlier in my earlier talk, belong to the lower group, the foundation of the entire educational structure. And therefore, Swami has been laying down a sort of sequential presentation of the value education program in a way which is something in tune with the psychology of the children. And this is exactly what Swami did when he talked to us in Prashanti Nilay. I will give an example. First, Swami began by saying that the entire creation has been started by God, and God is the seed. This is the model that Swami presented towards us, and later on he went on to the personality development of the children. First, the model. The organic model of a growth of a tree is what Swami mentioned, which is similar to the growth of a child. God is the seed, is what Swami started first. Then, what happens to the seed? The seed is sown into the soil, as we all know, and in due course of time, it changes into a plant, and then the plant later on develops into a huge tree. Now, the tree will grow and stand tall and will be a healthy tree when its roots are very strong. Swami mentioned about this tree that the roots are like the roots of the human being, they must be very strong. And Swami mentioned that the truth is the root of the human being, the truth. Now, the model which Swami mentioned, I am showing it here, as you can see here. This is how the presentation was made by Swami. Swami said that the tree is seen. It gives us flowers and fruits and seeds and fodder and leaves, everything. And therefore, it is such a great work doing Seva, because everything that the tree gives is for us after receiving what the seed needs to grow into a tree. Take an example. A seed weighs only about a few grams, but when it grows into a huge tree, it weighs a few tons. Where does it get all this from? The 5 elements: the air and the soil and the water and the sunshine and everything. And having grown into a mature tree, it gives everything back to the 5 elements. It gives every year the fruits and the flowers and the fragrance and everything there. In a similar way, the human being from the childhood when he or she grows is receiving the education from outside, and in due course of time when it reaches the adulthood, should give everything back to the society. And therefore the model of the trees is relevant to consider this. And Swami talked about the tree as the roots as the truth of it. Now the roots must get sustenance from inside with the water. And Swami mentioned that the love that is within us is in fact the undercurrent of all the 5 values. And Swami's words were, it is on the foundation of truth that the walls of dharma are raised. What you see outside in our behavior, what you see outside above the ground of the tree is in fact the part of the dharma, the foundation is very important. So that is the last point is about the and this was so that everything the undercurrent water which is there going the tree, and the water goes up and down and so on. And therefore the other 4 values are also related. Or 92. And mentioning that similarly for the human values program, we have to feed the children with love. When the children grow in the beginning, tremendous amount of love and care has to be given to the children. Just as a small sapling needs protection while it is growing outside, similarly the children would need the protection as they are growing. The truth within is the foundation which must be very strong, and on the strong foundation that your actions should come out, and therefore you should acquire peace and joy and happiness and so on. Having said this, Swami said this is the sort of model which has to be taken. The curriculum for value education in school will be dependent upon how we sequence it in terms of this organic model. In a similar way, just like the tree grows and ultimately contributes everything to the entire environment, the child should also be a good citizen and contributing back to the society. A tree, as we all know, if it is a healthy tree, contributes as much oxygen as is required by 4 individuals, 4 human beings. And therefore you can see that kind of a sustenance which is given by the tree to the society is something the child should be giving. So the beginning has to be made at the foundation level of the education system, which is the primary and the secondary schools. There are 3 foundations that I am talking about at the moment. One, the foundation of Indian culture, which I will come in the end related to what I am talking now. The second foundation is the foundation of the tree, which is taken as a model. That is, the roots have to be strong, they should be fed with love, and they should spread. It is on that foundation the tree should be there. And the third is the foundation of the human being, which is the truth inside, the ãgama inside, the conscience inside, which must be made very strong with love and tender care of the caretaker. Who are the caretakers for the children at that stage? First, when the child is born, Swami says life begins with love. So the life, once the child is born, the love is also with it, the mother's love, the parents' love at that time. Later on, when the child becomes older, goes to the schools, and therefore in school also the same kind of love has to be extended, and this kind of knowledge should be gradually given to them. Initially, it is important that the children are only given those things which nurture their internal excellence, which nurtures and blossoms their internal potential, but the Shastra, the higher level of knowledge, has to be given very slowly as they grow up. This is the methodology, the sequence which needs to be done. Compare what is happening, what Swami is talking about, and what is happening now in the society. I'm sure you all know that the children go to the school and there is a lot of knowledge of the external world which is given to them. Imagine that the children are receiving this knowledge from the external world through the books, through their teachers, and all other things that we create for them. What is happening here is that this external knowledge comes and becomes part stored in our hard disk, that is the mind. And we make use of it for later on for action. Now, this is an external knowledge. Swami always says that this knowledge that we receive, the information that we receive, is actually not, is good for a breadwinner, but does not tell the child the reality of his own personality. Remember, when Swami was young, at the age of 14, around 14, on 20th of October, Swami was in school. He came back out of the school and never returned. When he came home, he kept his books aside. He never wanted to use them now. And as the door was opened by the sister-in-law, he told his sister-in-law very clearly, the Maya has gone. My devotees are calling me. My work has begun. And then Swami went to the garden of one of his devotees, Anjaneya, sat on a rock and went deep within himself. People had gathered around because they came to know that Swami has come home and it's a different thing that is happening on his face, different aura and so on. As they gathered, Swami gave his first message to them, the message of educare, the message of the methodology to be used in order to bring out the excellence from within. What is that methodology? Swami said, the sansara is very difficult to cross over. What is needed is something, a methodology by which the mind doesn't interfere with the work, with the expansion. Swami said the mind has to be bended. In other words, give it at the lotus feet of the Guru within. And therefore, it should not play that important role as the role to be played by the heart. And so the methodology of educare is to open out the heart and therefore keep the mind which is actually receiving information from outside. So Manasa Bhajare Guru Sharanam Dustara Bhavasagara Taranam. This song is actually giving the process of educare. And this is what Swami was telling us. What is happening at that particular time is that when the child comes to school, if we burden the child's mind with all sorts of information and others, and keep the child busy with that, the internal growth sometimes there is no opportunity of bringing the love and other things out from within. Education is the information and knowledge gaze from the outside world. Educare is the knowledge of the inside reality. And both these things, if we look at it, are important for the child to receive. Education will help the child for gainful employment as a breadwinner, be successful in the material world. But then what is needed in life is not just the success in the material world, but an internal peace, joy, happiness, harmony, love, etc. For that, therefore, you need an internal development, a big bringing out of the potential which is there inside. This awakening of the inner dignity, awakening to an inner reality, bringing out the excellence, the potential from within, is what is called educare. Swami started using this word educare with a simple definition which I want to tell you here. Swami said, educare is a Latin word which means to bring out. This is sentence 1. Sentence 2, we all have latent values which are already within us. This is sentence number 2. And Swami's sentence number 3 in the definition is a combination of the two, where Swami says, educare means to bring out the latent values from within. And Swami elaborates by saying that bringing out means what? Bringing out is putting these values into action in our life. This is the simple definition. And the potential is all within. And therefore to bring that out is what educare should be. How does it happen? If you look at the external education, we are concerned with the education and good results of our children. How do we do that? I have got 2 stories about it. One story is that as a principal, once a teacher, when the school opens in June, the teacher comes to me and says, because they had the summer vacation, before the vacation earlier in April, the examinations had been held, and the children always get good marks, as you know now, 60, 70%, 80%, 90%, 95%, 100%. But when they come in June, this teacher, 5th class teacher, talks to them and finds out that they know nothing. So she comes and complains to me, sir, the 4th class children don't know anything at all. I have to teach everything from the beginning. Now, I know what is happening. So I will tell this teacher, ma'am, 5 minutes before you came, the 6th class teacher had come. And she was saying, the 5th class teacher had not taught anything at all. You know what will happen? We teach them, they get good marks, and within a couple of months, everything is forgotten. That is the sort of education system we have nowadays. It doesn't last for a long time. In fact, everything that we learn in school, most of the content is all quickly forgotten by us. There is something which is not forgotten. Something which they carry for entire life, throughout the life. That something is the useful thing for them. And that is the sort of attitude that the children have gained. And that is something which we call as educare. So educare is for living, for life, and education is for living. And this distinction carried is very important. So what is it that educare, and what is the methodology for education? Education methodology is known to all of us. We are experts at that as teachers. The 10th class teacher may sometimes complete the syllabus by mid of the year, by August, September. In fact, some of them complete the syllabus in 9th itself. And then the children come to the 10th class. And then the revision, test, revision, test. If they are not satisfied, then they get tuitions, more work for them, tuitions. If the books are too heavy, they bring small books, they digest as they call it, study that. Everything is learned by heart without really understanding. And they mug it up. They learn it by heart without understanding the topic. So they sort of swallow whatever has been given by the teachers and vomit that thing in the examination on the paper. This is the system that is going on. Results are 80%, 90%, 95%. But when we ask them what simple things, they are not able to do it because they have forgotten or they have not looked it from that point of view. They have not opened their heart. And therefore, sometimes we are very happy to show my child got 95%. The schools give advertisements, our school children they got so many marks in examination. Sometimes they even put big boards outside the school. But this education does not serve the real purpose of giving them the reality of life, does not give them this sort of happiness and joy and so on. We need something else, which is educate. That means if you look at my hands, you can see here education is something you bring and put it into the head. Whereas educare is to bring it out from the heart. You can see if you look at my hands, you will see the one process is from external to the internal and put it in the head. The other is to bringing out from the heart from within. Since the two are opposite to each other, even in hands, the methodology of bringing this out and applying this is also opposite to it. For example, Baba gives an example of a bird. A bird has two wings. And if the bird wants to soar high into the sky, then the bird can use both the wings. Can the bird work with only one wing? It's not possible. If you are actually going in a boat with the oars within your hand, then if you see that both of them have to be coordinated and work in a way that you can go forward. If you don't use one, then it will just go on in a circle, move, and therefore it will not be able to move forward at all. So both education and educare are needed, just like the bird needs both the wings. I have been talking about this in some of my courses, and once so happened struck to me that when I use the wings of the bird like that, you can see that one wing is going in one direction, the other in the opposite direction. In fact, one is clockwise, the other is anti-clockwise. So are this education and educare opposite to each other? Are they opposite? Is there a conflict? No. They work in coordination together. They are complementary to each other. In a similar way, if that happens with the oars and that happens with our hands or the bird's wings, the same thing should happen with the education and the educare that we are providing them. One, the external world information, the other, the internal potential to be developed. In fact, if you look at the charter of the organization, the charter very clearly mentions the goal of the organization of what it should do. It is to awaken the divinity from within. And this has been given by Bhagawan Baba to all of us. The awakening of the divinity from within is the opening of the heart, opening of the inner potential, the inner excellence. And that has to have a totally different methodology than the methodology for education. What is the methodology for education? Now, this is known to most of you, but I want to list it quickly here and won't go into great detail. There are 5 things which we teach the Balikas children. Everybody knows about it. The first is meditation and silence. The second is prayers and positive thinking. The third is vibrations and good music, devotional music, good singing. The fourth is storytelling, reading of good literature, good company, good environment. And the fifth one for children is the Bal Vikas group activities, which are based on various values. At the same time, for adults, the group activity is Seva. These are the 5 techniques of self-transformation as far as educare is concerned. Everywhere, whatever we do, these are the only 5 which have been recommended by all great people. The point is, if you take a story, which story you are taking will differ from which level the child is. What is the cultural background of the child? So the psychology is very important here. Education is applied philosophy. And therefore that education which we give them or the educare we give them will depend upon what is suitable to the child. Prayers. Which prayers do we take? Is there any fixed prayer only you can take when you, for example, pray before your lunch? Is it Brahmarpanam? Is it Haridata Haridbhokta? Or is it wrong to say, for example, let us be grateful for what we are about to receive? The point is not which particular prayer. The point is with what kind of a bhava, with what kind of an understanding, with what kind of a mindfulness that we are able to pray. This is positive thinking and prayer. Similarly about the meditation and silent sitting. You can't start suddenly the candle in front and children sitting there and so on with the pre-primary children. Let us first them do the first step, which is silent sitting in the class. In other words, every curriculum that we introduce here, and this is what we have learned from Bhagawan, the entire curriculum has been properly framed. It is sequenced according to the psychological development of the children. Sitting silently together with eyes closed for a minute or two sometimes is even difficult for the young children who come to us. So that steadiness, the concentration, the lack of disturbance and movement and so on is something which is very important. There is a discipline which is there. This is what we should do in the beginning. What I was again trying to say, at the foundational stage of the child, that is the primary and pre-primary, there is a certain thing that we do at the lower rung, and then we go on building it up at the higher rung of the hierarchy of education. This methodology, that it should change depending upon the sociology and the psychology and the philosophy, is something which Bhagawan gave in framing the Ep7 curriculum. Part of that, the vibration and music, is known to everybody. Nowadays, there is a lot of things people are talking about music therapy and so on. But the vibrations have a tremendous impact on them. And so Veda chanting is one of the things. Therefore, the teachers who are teaching the Vedas talk about not the Shastras, but the first discipline of the child. There is a tremendous amount of self-discipline needed if you sit properly, steadily, do the pronunciation. The tongue actually needs that practice at a younger age, which will not be possible to acquire at a lower age, that type of pronunciation. All this is psychologically built up. And Swami mentioned about this when he says, here only the chanting, Shastra will come later. In fact, once my predecessor, one of the talks did mention that Swami was talking to one of them and said, these people who are reciting the Vedas, they should now know the Shastra behind it. So the Shastra comes later on. The sequence, I would say the ladder of consciousness is built so that each rung is the sequence which is built, is very important for us to understand what is going on. And then only the foundation must be very, very strong. It is only on the strong foundation that a tall building comes. In Mumbai, I have seen buildings 50, 60, 70 stories building, but the foundation we don't see. It is all underground. So human being's foundation is inside. It is only the impact of that which comes outside. As Swami said, that's why we say Satyam Vada Dharmam Jara. The Satya is inside and the Dharma is outside, known, seen, appreciated, understood by other people, observed by other people. This kind of a psychology was very clear to all of us when Swami mentioned about this, that here only the chanting and later on the Shastra will come. What is the future of that particular Ved Pathshala, Ved Shastra Pathshala? We don't know about the future. But right now, what we have to do, Swami had given very clear instruction. In other words, what I'm trying to put here is that my involvement is in the value education program. My involvement is as a teacher at this particular level. And therefore, it has given me a certain understanding that the development of the human personality, there are two aspects. One is what we receive from the external, the other is what we receive from the internal. And a part of the internal, that is development of the education program, Vedas, which are the foundations of Indian culture, have a great role to play. But how it should be played is something we have to decide in terms of the curriculum and dependent upon the age of the child. I want to say one more point before I go to the next one. And the point which I want to mention here is that all this knowledge which goes to the children here at the educator level, this knowledge has to be organized in a systematic way by the people, that is the teachers and the educators, in a way dependent upon their understanding and so on, that it ultimately reaches the goal. You see, the goal for everybody, whether it is given in the charter, whether it is the goal for the human being, is all very well known to us. I mean, we don't have to debate on that thing. But the path which we take is extremely important. Bhagawan came and gave the path to us, a curriculum, a syllabus, a methodology, a pedagogy for development of the child's personality. Swami very clearly said the goal of education, what is it? The end of education is character. Now, what do we mean by character? It has been vaguely defined by people around. I always wonder, when the schools give a school living certificate, there is mentioned their character good. It is printed. There is no way of evaluation of character in the entire school that they do, and yet it has to be written character good. You cannot write anything which is already printed. Has anyone gone deeper into it and understood how will you define, how will you get the criteria of a good character? Swami very simple was defined character. Character is the unity of thought, word and deed. The thoughts which come out should be pure. The words which come out from the heart, they should not be mixed with emotions in such a way that they are not pure. And the action also has to be something which is dharmic. Now the point is, we have these three things. Hands, of course, symbolizing action. We have got several senses to do the action, karma thing. But hands are taken as a symbol. So the head, hand and heart, 3H, as Swami has said, they all have to be working in consonance, because all of them have to be pure. All of them something should serve the same purpose. They must be in consonance with each other. How is that possible? It is possible only with one way, that the love which comes from the heart goes to each of them. In other words, when love comes with the thoughts, they become pure. And therefore we get an idea of what the truth is. If the love comes and mixes with our emotions, the emotions become pure. And the moment the emotions become pure, we are not disturbed, we experience peace. When the same love goes into our actions, loving action is a dharmic action. It is the dharma that we are conducting. And therefore love becomes the sort of a undercurrent, as Swami has used, or we can say the common denominator of all these three H, the head, the hand and the heart. Kaya, Vacha, Karmana. And because there is one common denominator, they all can come in consonance. So love is an extremely important part which must go to each of them. And therefore they should come together. The moment all three come together, they are in consonance with each other. What you think is what you say, and what you say is what you do. Automatically, therefore, they will be in consonance, and such a person is a person of good character. So we have a clear criteria Swami gave us to understand what criteria is. And for this thing, how does it happen? The methodology, the 5 techniques as we have seen, they remain the same, whichever way, whatever way we do it. Which prayer you choose will depend upon not only the culture of the people of that land. I mean, the prayer in India and the prayer in England could be different as long as it is prayer. If music, for example, a song, for example, a bhajan, for example, could be different in Chinese or Spanish or Indian. But what is important, as you can see, is that Bhagawan has said, if the music is good, then the bhav is important in everything. You can learn raga from outside. You can learn the tala from outside, the teacher. But the bhav is not learned from outside, it comes from within. So this combination of Bhav, Rag and Tal, Bhagawan has said Bharat is something unique to this country and is a great important component of the education program. The same thing is with the Vedas. The more deeper we go into it, we realize it is not just the vibrations, but the vibrations are important. It is the meaning. Just like Bhagavan says, if you sing a bhajan, if you are singing the bhajan of Shiva, then think about the greatness. Think about the various things about when you say about the Shiva and so on. The more you understand about in terms of stories, in terms of what it signifies and so on, the more bhav will be there in singing it. The same thing is the Veda education. And that is important. So in practice, there are two things which are always there. One is the theory part of it. The other is the practical part of it. We consider, as a teacher, I consider therefore, both are equally important. Sometimes I think one is more important than the other. So, what is it? The theory and the practice. The concept and its materialization. And these two have to be combined together. One is the educare aspect of it, the knowledge. The other is the skill aspect of it, the aspect which actually gives you the education. And when both have to be combined, when we say, I am talking, making a balance between the two. I have seen here that if you understand something very deeply, but are not able to put it into practice, it is unproductive. It doesn't work out. If you are very active about certain things, but don't understand the theory, don't have the concept of the holistic point of view there with you, then it will not work out. It will not bring out the result that you want. We have to have a balance between the two. And therefore, understanding this is what is needed in every aspect of the value education program, including the chanting of the Vedas and their meaning. In the younger age, we were taught as a student, of course, certain shlokas and others only. I did not have a very great education in Veda at all. In fact, I don't know anything at all like the Shastris and the Pandits who are there. But even those few things which I learned, there are certain things which we learned, Sathya Meva Jayate. It is not something new, only adopted in 1950. It has been there in the Veda, it has been there in the Shastra. Same thing, the Adveshta, Sarvabhutana. The point which I am trying to make is, we remember this. I make use of this in whatever presentation I make because I remember them. So that memory becomes strong when you teach Veda at the younger age than if you teach them at the older age. It is not that motivation or that ability is not that strong when you are an older person. So therefore, the sequence of all this is very important. Now, having said this, I would gradually come to the closing part of it. The closing part of it, what I am trying to do here is to use the word foundation. The foundation of Indian culture, we say, are the Vedas. What is it that Indian culture gives us? I thought about it because we have also contemplated upon it among our group. What I am trying to say is, how many people have access to the Vedas? How many have read the Vedas? I mean, this audience and other audience, everybody will say, no, I have not done it. I am sure most people will say that except a few people who may be around here. And yet, and this is very important, although I did not have a direct access or I did not read the Vedas, but whatever is there in the Vedas is what many of us, almost all of us, seem to be practicing or at least understanding that is the practice. And this is what the strength of the Indian culture is. The common person, 99.9% of the people in India, say 2000 years back or 3000 years back or 4000 years back, did not really, with exponents, did not really have read or understood the Vedas. They had no access over it. They did not go to the ashramas and so on. And yet everybody was following the dicta, whatever was saying. How did it happen? The foundation were the Veda. Every knowledge is there. But the Indian culture put it to the people, common man, in such a way, which is not the Vedas, but the application of the Vedas in story form, others and so on. For example, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana is full of story just like we tell the children. It is also full of the interpretations of various things like Sri Ram does and Sri Krishna does. What was the greatness about Sri Ram? People always say one of the things that we remember is prana jaya par vachan na jaya. This is exactly what Swami is talking about, the integration of head, hand and heart. See, Swami has been putting in a modern form, but this is exactly what talking. Same thing about Krishna. He gave the entire Gita. And in the Gita it was very clear to all of us that what he was talking is about the Veda. It is the Veda. In fact, sometime when the value education program started, I'm talking about 20, 25 years back, some people started saying this educare is really the fifth Veda. I don't know whether we should call it the fifth Veda as Swami, because these are already in the Veda. What Swami has done is bring that knowledge to the level of the common person and give the methodology of learning that particular Veda in such a way that without really that access there and without in fact knowing much about it, the practicality of in the life was very clearly mentioned there. This is the greatest contribution I think that the avatar has given to all of us by his own actions, and therefore we say his life is his message, and by giving it in practical terms to all of us and having a curriculum. The EHV curriculum is in fact the first in Indian history, not Indian history, the world history, that a proper curriculum with all the aspects of it, its foundations, its content, its methodology, its approach, its techniques, its teacher preparation plan, its evaluation process, everything is there like any good curriculum. And this is the first time it has happened. That is the uniqueness. And this was required because we are now at a stage where there is a tremendous predominance of science. And therefore the methodology of thinking and processing and so on is very different now, which was never there at the time of Sri Krishna and Sri Rama. This is a unique one which are developed over the past 500 years. So we had to use those techniques. We have to use that methodology. We have to use that psychology, which is known to us now in terms of student development. We have to understand the impact of the social context and so on, the culture of the people, and based on that it was given. This is exactly what our rishis and the seers did 5,000, 7,000 years back, so that a common person from one end of India to the other, north to south, east to west, they all followed the same culture, the commonality of it. There is a unity about the whole thing. And also in the working, the same purity remained there. But without them actually having access to the Vedas. So the Vedas are the source. The Vedas are the foundation. But the structure is what matters, because the foundation is unseen, just as for the building, just as for the tree, same is for the student, and yet the impact of it is felt outside. As long as that is being fed by love internally, that is the undercurrent, it will always be pure, and there the result will always be like. As long as we are very clear that we are going on a path where the goal is very clear and the path has been given by Swami, how it is to be done, we will not go wayward here and there. And therefore we will always proceed in a way where it will fulfill the destiny of the student, the destiny of the nation, the destiny of this country. So Vedas are source, yes. The culture is something which is an application which was given by the rishis and munis and traced with the common person through different types of literature, through different methods. The songs were there, the stories were there, the dhyana and other thing was there, the activity, the festivals and others and so on. These are all methods by which the same things were taught to India from one end to the other end. So therefore, as a result of that, the unity, the purity was maintained, the unity of the country was always there because the head, hand and heart came because of the love. This is a uniqueness, and therefore once you have got unity and you have got purity, what else is divinity? This is what was achieved there. So the foundation of the Indian culture, the foundation of the system of the structure of education, which is actually the primary level and the secondary level there at the younger age, the foundation of a curriculum which actually is going to the base of what is the theory, what is the concept, what is the philosophy, and what is the practicality, the foundation of a tree, which is an organic model, and the foundation of the human being, which actually later on is the evolved, complete, perfection. that is all the same. That is important. It has to be nurtured properly, understood properly, and implemented properly. Vivekananda said, for example, that the process of education is a process of unfolding of the perfection already within. What does it mean? The perfection is already there. What education is doing is a manifestation of that perfection. That process of manifestation of the internal perfection is education. And therefore the methodology is the five methodologies, the five techniques that I have given here. Whichever sort of definition that we give, the person who developed the kindergarten method, the German person, kindergarten is for children, as you know, gave the same definition in his own way, in a simple way. What did he say? He said, education is what? Education is to make external what is internal. Simple. To make external what is internal. It was not to get from outside and put it. And that education was educare, therefore. To make external what is internal. The internal is everything there. And make it here. And Swami, therefore, put the same thing in a very perfect form for the 20th century and later on. That it is ultimately the latent thing which has to come out. And come out means to put it into practice. This is the total picture that Swami has been able to give us. We understood in the Educare program, and this is it drew us towards the Veda chanting and others, because that is an integral part which is coming from the source, the divine source, the Shruti that we have got here, and from there it has to be applied here. We need to know that one source, which is actually the pure source, and how to apply at the practical level, at the student's level. And this is where the role of the teacher and the parent become important, and that is how we are to do. I have tried to put a practical point of view. I have tried to put these things together in terms of the methodology. That was my aim here, to bring it out and show the importance of the foundation and its importance in terms of understanding the actual reality of what happens in human beings, taking the various examples which are around it. I would be very happy if you try to accept a little bit of what I have said here, and if you have any questions, if there are any doubts and so on, I would be very happy, and any suggestions, I will be very happy to listen them from you. I am grateful to all of you, the management, for allowing me to say a few words and share my views on this. Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. We are extremely thankful to revered Dr. Pitre ji for such a wonderful exposition. Is bringing many of the Swami's messages very nicely and elaborately explaining to us in a way that we will be able to absorb it easily. He started off with narrating the genesis of Sri Sathya Veda Shastra Patashala, and he very nicely emphasized Swami's words, how it is Veda Shastra Patashala, and very nicely explained to us how recitation is very, very important, and that's the very first step that one we need to take, and later on move on to the Shastra part, the knowledge part. This he explained to us wonderfully, the way the whole thing has manifested in Swami's plan. Right from 1982 till today, the series of episodes which has come up one after other as a manifestation of Bhagawan's plan is very much in tune with this Sri Sathya Veda Shastra Patashala. He reminded us about the wonderful message that Bhagawan has given us way back in 1992 in Prashanti Mandir. Swami mentioning about the importance of human value program after having emphasized the recitation way back in 82. Subsequently, the Shastra part started in 1992, and slowly the growth took place. He wonderfully related the growth of a seed to a huge gigantic tree to the growth of a child. And the explanation given is really very, very touching, and it is going to remain with us. He reminded us again about the three important foundations. One is with the simple analogy of the tree model. Next, the Indian culture, foundation of Indian culture, and related it how these two things are really related to the foundation of human being. The importance of education and educare has been wonderfully explained by Pitreji, how education and educare are two wings of the bird for its balanced flight, and he very nicely expounded the wonderful point which Bhagawan has time and again told us, Ihamuna Tariyampa Hema Taraka Vidya Paramuna Tariyampa Brahma Vidya. So you are going to have both the worldly and the spiritual knowledge for a successful life. And he elaborated it the way Bhagawan has planned, and he has also reminded us of the the transformation principles or the formula that Bhagawan has given, so that we can have as a guideline the 5 important things for transformation that Pitreji reminded us are: number 1, meditation and silence; number 2, positive thinking; number 3, vibration and singing; number 4, good literature reading and good company and Balvikas. And he has emphasized how Bhava Suddhi is important, how Veda recitation is important for the strong foundation of a healthy living. He later on moved on to say for the development of the personality, education and educare are very important, by the way of saying that at the end of education is character. He emphasized what the meaning of the definition of character as unity of thought, word and deed as given by Bhagawan Baba. The unity in 3H, unity in thought, word and deed, as he reminded us, is enabled by the undercurrent called love. Raga, Tala are something which we can gain from external world, but the Bhava is something which has to emanate from within us. And this is what educare and education would give. Raga and Tala is something like gifts from the education, and Bhava is a gift from educare. So educare and education are two important aspects which one should have the practical knowledge, theory plus practical knowledge. So when you have a theory, when it becomes skill, when it's converted to skill, it becomes useful and strong, and with which we will be able to serve the society. He has wonderfully explained to us. Thank you very much, Pitreji, for reminding us of this wonderful sequencing that you have mentioned and elaborately shown how this sequencing has been coming along from ancient days. You reminded us about Prana Jai, Na Vachan Na Jai, which Rama has shown in his life. He lived for that. And he has shown through this one simple reminder, you reminded us that from the ancient days, educare and education have been going together hand in hand, and that's how it has been very much as a part and parcel of Indian culture. Though people were not formally introduced to the education of the Shastras, but this has become a part and parcel of our system, that everyone lived with this, and that's how the Indian culture is so rich. You very nicely explained to us, and all along reminding us of the great messages that we have been given by Bhagawan. The Vedas are roots and the foundation for this, for our very successful life. Thank you very much for reminding us on the importance of education and educare being two important things for a balanced life. We once again thank on behalf of all the participants for reminding us of this divine message and inspiring us to go in a balanced way, to give equal emphasis both for the education and educare. Thank you very much, Pitreji. Jai Sai Ram.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Sathya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka भक्तजना संरक्षक पति महेश्वरा ॐ जय जगदीश हरे शशिवदना श्रीकरा सर्वा प्राणपते स्वामी सर्वा प्राणपते आश्रित कल्पलतिका आश्रित कल्पलतिका आपदान्धवा ॐ जय जगदीश हरे मातपिता गुरुदैवमु मरियन्तयु नीवे स्वामी मरियन्तयु नीवे नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ नागेन्द्रशयन ॐ जय जगदीश हरे ओंकार रूप ओजस्वी हो साई महादेवा सत्य साई महादेवा मंगल आरती अंधुको मंगल आरती अंधुको मंगल गिरिधारी ॐ जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण 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 ॐ नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण 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 ॐ नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण 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 ॐ नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ सत्य नारायण नारायण ॐ जय सद्गुरुदेवा शांति 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 समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति